I'm going to make gobi sabzi for you today, which is spiced cauliflower. And there is such a story to this dish that I need to say it at the beginning. Maybe I'll tell you as I cut. I know that I seem to be someone who's always had a really close relationship to spice. Maybe that's how I seem. But Spice and I had a falling out. We had a period of years where we didn't communicate. It sort of wasn't until my early 30s when I had my two boys, and they were both babies, that I wondered why I was so unhappy. I had a beautiful marriage, I lived in a beautiful home with beautiful children and a job that I loved, or a career that I love, which is writing and food criticism. And the short of it was that I had, for the past decade before that, really disconnected from spice as a little bit of a way of shutting off from some family pain, and I missed it and I needed to find a way back. But this was the dish. Gobi sabzi was the one I turned to, and it's because it spoke so clearly to me of family and heritage. So that Kashmiri Pandit tradition, the taste of my mum and dad, the taste of my grandmother. I went down to mum and dad's house. We lived in Melbourne at the time. Scott had the boys overnight. Mum and dad were in India. And there was no one in that house, and I went down and I cooked this dish. And I cried and I ate the whole thing standing there at the pan, because I couldn't quite believe, as I was making it, that I knew what to do and I felt it and I hadn't lost it. I just turned my back on it for a little while. Now, lucky that spice is very forgiving. Yeah, didn't hold a grudge. So I wanted to show you that dish. It's really beautiful. It's very simple. So essentially just a head of cauliflower, and we're going to deep fry it. So the deep frying is important because it really does transform cauliflower as a vegetable into the ideal vehicle for that Kashmiri Pandit spicing, which is earthy, warm, complex, iron fist in velvet glove flavour. So I've already got the kadai heating, and you think a whole cauliflower, like, it looks like a lot raw, but really this dish is so divine that I always think when I make it, the more the better. Also, as you deep fry the cauliflower, like when you deep fry any vegetable, because you're changing the moisture content, it really does shrink down and soften up. And in the end, what you're left with doesn't look like as much as what you started out with. You can just break them apart a little bit too. You don't have to be too pedantic about it. I've run out of kitchen towel, so just a little bit of newspaper on a plate just to drain it off a little bit, because it does hold quite a lot of oil, which is lovely, but too much oil means that the spice will struggle to articulate through the viscosity on the outside. Take this across. As always with my special kaolin made spatula tool. Oh, what? I thought I put it on. Lucky. So the hotter the oil, I always have to yell over this a little bit. It's a bit hot. I want to cool it down, so I'm putting a little bit more cauliflower in. Now, the reason I want to cool it down a fraction is that I want the cauliflower not just to crisp up on the outside and remain firm on the inside. I want to be able to leave those florets in there long enough that they actually do take in oil all the way through to their core, because that will have an impact with the spice. So I am going to cook these again. These are twice cooked. It's always twice cooked, thrice cooked. Why cook something once when you could cook it 3 times in 3 different fats? It does make it tasty. So if the oil starts to cool off too much, you just wait for it to heat up a fraction between between deep frying allotments, or whatever you want to call it. So the spicing for this gobi is classic for me and really pretty simple. So I wanted to keep it warm and earthy. I'll use a little bit of a hotter chili, turmeric, cumin seed, powder, cinnamon quill, cinnamon powder, a little bit of fennel, salt and fresh ginger. So I will talk about this in another video, but the palette of that spice is so warm and textural, depth, warmth, strength. They're all the things I want in this dish. All right, so this is utmost simplicity. Cinnamon quill and fresh ginger. So the cinnamon quill is very, very structural. Cinnamon has in the pan as a translation of flavour exactly that quality. It's tall, it's tight, it's wooded, it's structure. So this, the capacity of this spice, or the function of this spice in this dish, which is that very soft, beautifully fried gobi, is to replace inside that dish some of the structure we've extracted from the cauliflower and replace it with this spice. Because when you fry vegetables, they collapse in on themselves a little bit, and that's the beauty that allows them to collapse into the spice bed. But then that spice bed itself has to be supported structurally in order that the spice can articulate through the vegetable. So it's a little bit of a, you know, bait and switch game you're playing with produce and aromatics. The fresh ginger is for like a slicing heat and an earthiness, because ginger is, although it is quite sharp and can have the appearance of acidity, it's a very earthy expression of flavour. I mean, look at that. It's totally of the earth. Okay, so salt. I've done videos on this before, and I can put the link in, but don't forget that when you've fried produce, particularly softer vegetables, salt accelerates at a faster pace through that, so you need less. So just like a shy teaspoon of a fine pink salt, a bit more structure in there and some earthiness as well is the turmeric, so about 1/3 of a teaspoon. A hotter chili, because hot chili has earthier character, even though the flame can feel more lit. 1/2 teaspoon. Cumin seed, because it always tastes like home to me. 2.5 teaspoons. Cumin powder, to echo the character of the cumin seed and just to provide a little bit more grounding. But just a little bit actually, because it's quite strong, so about 1/3 of a teaspoon. Fennel powder, one of the classic spice expressions of Kashmiri Pandit cuisine. Fennel powder, 2 teaspoons. Cinnamon powder, to echo the cinnamon, 1/3 of a teaspoon. A little bit of jaggery. Can't believe I nearly forgot. Ginger powder, another one of the classic Kashmiri Pandit tastes. So again, an echo here. It's about a teaspoon. Now I am going to add in my ghee. All right, that smells amazing. I'm going to turn the heat down and taste it. Oh, all the notes. Pungent, earthy, hot, which is the he, and then sweetness and salt coming through the back. So, you know, really beautiful, complex flavor carried. Iron fist velvet glove, that's what that is. Totally. Okay. So the cauliflower just goes in, and now the key is to give this time on a little bit of low heat to let it come together. Even though it will look like the spice uptake occurs quickly, it takes time for that alchemy to occur between the vegetable and the masala. So, you know, at least 10 minutes on a lower heat so that you're not catching and burning the vegetable. But I can't step away without a sneaky taste. Oh my gosh, that's instantly amazing. All right, that's So only Trav knows that I was going to try and cheat you guys and finish it up earlier just to save a bit of time, but I tasted it and I couldn't let that happen. So we've actually turned the camera off and come back to it. The reason it's important to let this dish cook out for like that sort of 20, I said 10 minutes, but I'm going to say 20 to 40, because what happens otherwise is the oil becomes a barrier between the spice and the produce. So you actually have to cook it out for long enough that the oil, see what it's doing? Cooks out of the produce itself and then spends time in the pan, and the oil evaporates somewhat or gets taken up by that gobi, and the spice is clearer. So when I tried it again just now, it's just the nuances there in the spice gradient. So I get that earthiness, the heat, but the overall experience is very soft, and that oil viscosity is not so much of a taste. It's more like that piece of aromatic information that allows the cauliflower to collapse into the masala. So yeah, take your time with this one. It's really worth it. Gobi SABJI, my salvation.